Hello and welcome to Pictorial Planet. My name's John Finch. Today I'm in Grant Park in northeast Scotland near a town of Forres. Behind me you can see we're overlooking the Findhorn Bay. We're here for a very good reason, and that is because we're testing Geoffrey Crawley's FX15 developer. Now, FX15 developer used to be known as Acutol-S. It was sold by Paterson from the early 60s for about 15 years or so before it stopped production. But it got such a reputation that when Paterson stopped making it, Crawley released the formula to the public so that us photographers could keep using this amazing formula. I call it one of Geoffrey Crawley's masterpieces, and today we're going to see why. It was early in the 1960s that Paterson approached Crawley and said, will you make a range of developers for us? Not just any old developers, not just developers as good as the competition that's around now, which included things like D76, Microfen, UFG, ultra-fine grain developers and developers like that. We want you, Mr. Crawley, to make the best developers in the world. And Crawley sat down and he made them. We had developers coming out from Paterson like Acutol, superb Acutance developers. Acutol-S, which is FX15, which we'll be looking at today. We had Aculux, Acuspecial. These developers were way ahead of their time and formulated in such a way, in ways that no one else was formulating developers. It was really only until Xtol came out from Kodak that any developer was formulated and as well researched as the Crawley developers. And it was only until Xtol came out that we had developers that were as good as his. Of course, then he came out with his famous FX55, which I think knocks Xtol off its perch. So this guy could make amazing developers. So what was it that made this developer such a masterpiece by Geoffrey Crawley? Well, Crawley had been learning about Acutance developers. He'd made some of the greatest Acutance developers, FX1 and FX2. But the problems with these developers are they have grain and they have a lack of mid-tone separation. Their tonality is not as smooth and wide as something like, say, D76. But what Crawley had discovered was that if you used 3 developing agents, metol, phenidone and hydroquinone, carefully balanced and used specific pH, he was a master at optimizing the alkalinity of the developer. And if he matched a specific pH to those 3 developing agents and added sulfite at a high enough level to keep the grain reasonable, he had an amazing developer. Acutol-S. It was really an Acutol developer, an Acutance developer, but S for smooth. It was smooth, the grain was fine, and it had the wide tonality of D76, probably one of the most popular developers of all time. He'd cracked it. He'd finally made the ultimate all-round developer for slow, medium, and fast films. FX15 can be used in a variety of ways, which makes it a very versatile developer indeed. A little bit like D76, but with sharpness, sharp grain, acutance, mackie lines, all the things we love about an acutance developer that gives our photographs high impact, especially with 35mm. With 35mm film, we're really looking for high impact. One of the problems with 35mm, if you call it a problem, is that you have to enlarge it much more than medium and large format negatives. And because of this enlargement, it loses some of its impact. And Crawley had formulated developers to bring that impact into the miniature film format. He used miniature films himself, he even wrote a whole book on the Nikon 35mm system of the time. So yes, this developer can be used in a multitude of ways. It's very versatile. You can use it stock, and when you use it stock, it's great for portraits. And you know what? I like it too for landscapes. I like the stock solution very much. It still gives great sharpness. There's no mushiness about FX15 like D76 and ID11 at stock solution. But you can also use it at 1+1 dilution, which is great for landscapes. It's recommended for landscapes, and up to 1+3 dilution, which gives you even more acutance. Another thing to say about the stock solution is that it's really good for portrait work. It gives the skin a smooth, beautiful tonality whilst keeping a sharpness to the image that you just don't get with many of these other developers like D76. So yes, this developer really is one that should be on your list of developers to use. Hopefully today I'll be able to show that to you with some of these photographs that I'm taking. So finally, before I go back to the darkroom to develop this film in FX15, I just wanted to talk about the films that this developer is particularly good with. And one of them is PANF. PANF and FX15 are a match made in heaven. They're just beautiful. The tonality that FX15 gives to PANF is gorgeous, and it brings a real sharpness to that film as well. There's practically no grain to speak of when you do this, so you can enlarge PANF 35mm negatives considerably to get beautiful prints without any grain noticeable at all. Gorgeous. I often will enlarge them up to 11x14 or even 12x16, and they just make beautiful photographs. And I use the FX15 with PANF at stock and 1+1. They're the two dilutions I really like with that film. And the other favourite of mine is FP4 and FX15. They are gorgeous together, and of course you've got a little bit more speed there, so you can handhold more often. You can use it for street photography or photography where you're on the move and you haven't got the ability to be carrying a tripod around with you. And with FP4 we get a speed of around 160 we can set on our meter with this developer, and again it's gorgeous tonality right through the range. There's no compression. And with FP4 I'll usually use it at stock solution. So now I'm hoping I've got you excited enough to want to make your own FX15 developer and use it with your own films. You will not be sorry. So let's see how we make this. And the first thing we need to do is get sodium sulfite. It's the anhydrous sodium sulfite, and we're going to measure out 100 grams of this. Now be in a well ventilated room. I've got a fan on in the background. You can probably hear it sucking the air out of this room and replacing it. So it's well ventilated. There we are, 100 grams, a little smidgen more. There, 100 grams. And from that measured 100 grams, we take a little tiny bit, a smidgen, I mean that's a large pinch, and we put it in our warm water. And we mix that in. And once that's dissolved, it has taken out, that pinch of sodium sulfite has removed any dissolved oxygen in that water. So now we can add our metol. And here's our metol, and we're going to add 3.5 grams of metol, 3.5 grams. And I'm going to measure that out. Now I mix these all the time, but if you are new to mixing these or you're a little clumsy, then wear gloves and make sure you've got a mask on and safety goggles. You don't want to mess around with these chemicals, but given a healthy dose of respect, they're quite safe. Just 3.5, we're nearly there. 3.5, little bit more, come on. Oh, there we go. There. I'm not causing dust. Notice that I'm being very gentle with these so that there's no dust. I don't want to be breathing this in. Okay, that's our 3.5 grams. I'm going to put that in now and dissolve it. Always make sure these are fully dissolved before you add the next chemical. And now we add the rest of our sodium sulfite. So gently, not to cause any dust, pour it in. And I usually dissolve half at a time. It gives it a chance to dissolve better. And gently pour it in. Now you don't need to use one of these automatic mixers. You've seen me before mixing it in an ordinary jug with a stirring stick. That's just as easy, and in fact I used that for many years until a very kind patron bought me this automatic mixer. And thank you, Doug. I really do appreciate this. I use it all the time, so thank you. So we'll just make sure that's mixed right in before we add our next chemical. So the next two chemicals we want to add are phenidone and hydroquinone. And these two go in together. The hydroquinone actually helps the phenidone to not oxidize when we add it to this solution. So the two work together. It's good to add them at the same time, or add the hydroquinone first and then the phenidone. Let's put those in while the stir is working. So here's the hydroquinone, very gently, no dust, remember. Pop that in there like so. And the phenidone. Now with phenidone, it's always good to make sure there's no lumps. So make sure you just press it very gently to get rid of any lumps, because it'll dissolve much quicker if you do that. There it goes. And I'll just put these in water so they don't create dust. So I'm just making sure this phenidone sinks. It does take a little while to get wet. That's why if there's any big lumps, it takes a long time to dissolve. But we'll just keep that stirring until that's fully dissolved. And you can see I'm keeping this water at around 50 degrees, 55 degrees, something like that, to help these dissolve. You don't want to be much hotter than that, because I believe it starts to break the phenidone down a little bit. So keep your temperature around hand hot. When you feel it and it's hot to the hand, that's about right, but you can hold it. Look, any hotter than that and you're going to start to affect that phenidone. So we'll give it a few minutes and wait for that to fully dissolve. Okay, that's fully dissolved. The next things to go in are some sodium metabisulfite. That's common to people who make wine. They use a lot of this stuff. And borax. So these two can go in. I'll put the metabisulfite in first, fully dissolve it, and then the borax. And that's nearly dissolved already. Okay, and then the borax. That'll take a little bit longer. The borax is going to help create the alkalinity of the developer. The metabisulfite is slightly acidic, so Crawley here is fine-tuning the alkalinity. The next thing we add is a gram of sodium carbonate anhydrous. Let's put that in. And that's all dissolved, so let's pop that in. There. Very nice. And finally, we need to add some potassium bromide, 1.5 grams. Let me find that. Okay, pop that in. I'll put that in some water again, make sure there's no dust. So let's just quickly recap those ingredients. I got 800 millimeters of water at around 50 degrees centigrade. I added a pinch of sodium sulfite. I then added 3.5 grams of metol, 100 grams of sodium sulfite, 0.1 grams of phenidone, and 2.25 grams of hydroquinone. Now these scales don't measure 2.25, so I give it 2.2 grams of hydroquinone. I gave it 0.5 grams of sodium metabisulfite, 2.5 grams of borax, 1 gram of sodium carbonate, and 1.5 grams of potassium bromide. Now I'll make this up to 1 litre, and we have FX15. And I'm using cold water to top it up to bring the temperature down so I can use it more quickly. There we go. Lovely. Give it a little stir, and that's our developer stock solution. Well, that was a lot of information to take in, I understand, and I'm writing the complete article up for my patrons on my patron site, including examples of different dilutions and examples of grain and lots more information. So it's all getting written up into an article, as are all the previous FX developers that I've covered on my channel and the future ones that I will be covering. So if you're really interested in this Crawley developer reports that I'm putting out, then please join my Patreon channel and you will get a lot more information on these to help you make the right choices of what developer you would like to use. So thank you for watching, thank you for getting through all of that, and I really appreciate your watching my YouTube videos, giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. And finally, of course, my patrons, I've got to thank you guys more than anything else, because you are bringing all of this work and all of these YouTube videos to everybody in the world. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it, as I'm sure everybody else does who's watching this video as well. So I will see you next time with another video on Crawley's FX developers. I wonder if it's going to be FX